Hello and welcome to a new episode of That Fertile Feeling, the podcast. This is another episode on my series of working with your cycle. The last two episodes cover the 2 week wait and getting your period. Now, usually we would move on to the follicular phase, so the phase after your period where your eggs start to grow. But I figured that I would dedicate one episode to pregnancy loss before we move on because many of the steps that I outlined during the previous episode on getting your period actually apply here, but in a slightly different way. So I don't want to suggest that loss is anything like getting your period. That's why I've turned this into a separate episode. And I find it so important to cover this because when I had my own loss back in 2016, there was hardly any information out there on how to support yourself through loss. And now there's more information available, but it's all still very technical. And what I feel is that we're missing a postpartum guide for lost mamas. So, how to really take care of yourself physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally after loss. So that is what I will focus on in this episode. I will quickly dive into what's happening at the hormonal level when you experience loss. And I will also explain how that affects you at the physical level, the emotional and spiritual level, not only during the loss, but also in the weeks and months after. So even if your loss happened a while back and you've gone through the physical side of things, there's still so much that you can do on an emotional and spiritual level to tend to yourself. So I will provide you with a couple of strategies to support yourself during and after loss. Um, and the reason I find it just came up again in my own work. I just finished a one-on-one container with a client, Lena, who came to me after she lost a baby in November last year. Um, and she is in IVF right now. Um, she couldn't pick up the phone to schedule another transfer. Like that loss was so devastating that it immobilized her. And even though she really wants to become a mother, like she wasn't able to take the steps to get there, these next steps, because that loss was just weighing on her so heavily. And that's like some of the most special feedback I've ever gotten is that after our work together, she's now picked up that phone and she has scheduled her next transfer. So by really being with the loss and working through that, she found back the place of love, trust, and confidence within herself to keep going on her fertility journey. So don't underestimate the importance of this work. This is really, as you all know, like when you're trying to conceive after loss, it can be a really scary time. Your pregnancy won't be the same, like the next pregnancy won't be the same. So that's why it's so crucial that you really work through whatever happened to you, not to get back to a clean slate, but so it doesn't weigh on you subconsciously. So let's start with the hormonal side of things. When you experience loss, one basic thing happens. As your pregnancy progresses, your body starts to produce extraordinary amounts of estrogen and progesterone. So these are the fertility hormones. And what these hormones also do is that they create dopamine and serotonin. These are two they're called neurotransmitters, so two chemicals in your brain that help you feel calm and happy. That's why so many women when they are pregnant, although usually not after loss, but normally women who are pregnant, they have that sort of serene feeling over them. Now, when you lose your baby, these hormones plummet. So the progesterone and the estrogen, they just crash. This also happens when someone delivers a healthy baby, and then it's called the baby blues. So around day 3, you would generally see tears coming in because of these hormonal shifts. This also happens when you lose your baby prematurely. Um, the big thing though is that usually you don't have the support network to take care of you, whereas there's usually a community there, or at least that's becoming a trend now that women are starting to understand that they need to have a good support network postpartum. That's not what's available to most women when they experience loss. So that's really hard. You have these hormonal changes going on that are making the loss even harder to bear. Um, and there's no one there to take care of you. The good side, though, is that you can also work with your hormones to find some relief, and that's something I'll cover in this podcast episode as well. But let's turn to that first stage of loss first. I will discuss 5 stages of loss today. They don't necessarily happen in a linear fashion. It's just easier to present them this way. So you might be experiencing some of these stages at the same time. I'm not talking about the 5 stages of grief here, but really about the physical and emotional process of loss. So the first stage is physical loss. And now obviously there are many different types of miscarriages. Maybe you saw on your scan that there's an empty sac, or that your baby never developed a heartbeat, or that the baby's heart has stopped. So you know, like with your rational mind, that the baby has passed or that there is no baby, but your body hasn't caught up yet to that loss. So you know that something is about to happen. You're in that transitional phase. Or maybe you just started bleeding and you lost your baby. That's actually what happened to a friend of mine. She was just sitting on her couch and lost her baby, with no indication that this was going to happen. It's usually what it looks like on television, right? Um, Now, sometimes you can even be so far along that your body, even after that loss, still looks pregnant. Your milk might be coming in. So that all makes it really hard for your mind to catch up. Whenever you look in the mirror, you still look pregnant, or you still have these symptoms. Maybe, your HCG levels haven't dropped yet, so you still feel um, your pregnancy nausea, for example. So that can make it really difficult for your mind to catch up. Maybe your baby has implanted in your ovarian ducts, in your fallopian tubes, so that would require a life-saving medical intervention. There's so many ways in which a loss can happen. You can either wait for the loss to come on its own, or you can get medical support. So that would mean taking medication or getting a DNC to remove your pregnancy. In my case, I just worked from home and waited it out. We found out on our ultrasound, our 12-week scan, that our baby no longer had a heartbeat. So I knew that a loss was coming on. And I decided to wait it out at home. That gave me the time to process the fact that I was no longer pregnant. It was a really, I don't want to say special time. It was really painful, but I felt that it helped me those days. It took about 10 days for my loss to come on. It was good for me because it helped me realize I was no longer pregnant and transition to what was going to happen to me. But these are like individual preferences, right? There is no right or wrong here. This is really about feeling what would be good for you. If you want to go into the hospital, get it removed straight away. If you want to wait it out. Um, if your loss comes on its own, then depending on how far along you are, you might experience a buildup of cramping and the release of your pregnancy over the course of a couple of hours. So in my case, I had some spotting, I think, for those entire 10 days. And then I had one intense night where my cramps just got really heavy, labor-like even. Um, and then at some point it was like real labor. I just felt in my body that I needed to get to the bathroom. Um, and I passed my baby there. I recorded a whole episode about my own experience. It's episode 28. I will put it in the show notes as well if anyone wants to take a listen to that. So this is just for you to get an idea if you are waiting for a loss to come on, what you might experience. What you might feel is a primal urge to retreat within. And I would urge you to see if you can really create some space for that. Because, and that's also really been my own experience, if you can follow your body's lead in all of this, um, and turn it into a little bit of, I even want to say like a sacred space that also gives you a sense of control. I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but I even created some sort of like birth plan for my loss because I thought, okay, if this is going to happen, I want to make sure that it happens in a way that I'm really consciously aware, I'm in the moment. Um, that gave me a sense of I'm not just undergoing this thing that's happening to me. I'm not just subjected to a loss, but I'm consciously aware. I'm choosing how to have that loss. And I made a ridiculous birth plan where I was, I thought I would be going to lay down in my yoga room with candles and music. And once the moment arrived, it wasn't what I wanted to do at all. But that's also fine. Like giving yourself the permission to see, like, what would feel good for me? What do I want this to look like? And knowing that you have a choice in that as much as possible, depending on your circumstance, of course. So that is sort of the physical part. It can feel like labor. It usually takes a couple of hours. Then after that physical part, there is the physical recovery stage. So that's the second stage. During this stage, your womb is hard at work to heal after your loss. So on a physical level, what happens is that there's an influx of inflammatory cells into the endometrium. So that's the inner lining of the womb, and they break down the womb lining and start a repair process. So your blood vessels will narrow down and tighten. Your womb contracts to expel, additional blood. This can feel like menstrual cramping. And all of this is to make sure that there will not be a trace of a wound, that there won't be any scarring left. So your womb is left in optimal conditions for a next pregnancy. So it's really normal to experience blood loss for a couple of weeks. Your doctor will probably do a scan after 2 weeks to see if there's no tissue left in your womb. Um, this is what I found the trickiest part when I got my loss is that there were no real guidelines out there on how to take care of myself. So I knew that I was still bleeding. And everything I read said, okay, it's okay to go back to work after a few days. But in my case, I just didn't have the energy. I was bleeding. I felt really depleted. So I agreed with my boss that I would work from home for a couple of weeks until I felt strong enough to come back in. That was the best I could do at that time. I was still very much disconnected from my body. If I were in the same situation now, I would take even more rest. I just felt super responsible. I just had a new job. So I'm quite proud of myself that I stayed at home and worked from my couch. And with everything that I know now, I feel we deserve much more in that postpartum period after loss. One of my previous podcast guests, womb wisdom keeper Marina Lishova, I'll put a link to her episodes in the show notes as well. She actually had some great thoughts on this. So she said that women usually need 6 weeks to recover from labor after 9-month pregnancy. So depending where you're at with your loss, you should probably grant yourself at least 2 to 3 weeks of physical recovery, to the extent that your life allows for that, of course. And really, I feel this is a key point. Really understand that your body needs rest, that a lot is going on at the physical level. And this is what we need to normalize postpartum care after loss. So see if you can organize something so that your friends drop off nourishing foods for you. If you already have kids, maybe they can look after your kids for you. Get some gentle body work done. Have your partner take over at home. So see if you can really grant yourself that space to rest and recover for those 2 to 3 weeks. I know everyone always objects to this. It's the same when I talk about, the importance of resting when you're on your period. But allow yourself to at least visualize what the ideal situation would look like for you, and then see if you can grant yourself even just 1% that can create an important mindset shift. Just don't do anything, like drop all your social engagements, don't do any exercise, right? Just take it really slow. Um, don't do anything on your to-do list that isn't necessary. Just find that space to go within and recover. That brings me to stage 3, where you will see the benefits from this. I promised you at the start of this episode that you could also work with your hormones to find some relief during your loss. And this is what actually happens when you find that space to rest. It's something I mentioned during the previous episode on menstruation as well. So your body actually produces oxytocin as your womb contracts and you bleed. And oxytocin is commonly known as the love hormone. So as you slow down and retreat within, it might be possible for you to start noticing a feeling of bliss, of oneness, of belonging, of restoration. Not to say that there's no sadness, but these two things can exist next to each other. You can By giving into that rest and allowing others to take care of you, you can also start feeling the oxytocin work for you and really surrender to that I'm being taken care of feeling. Um, like I said, I didn't know any of this when I had my loss. I had the good fortune that just my two of my good friends came over to my house to drop off breakfast in the morning after I had my loss. So I think I texted this group of friends like, okay, this happened overnight. I'm so sad. So they just came by and they dropped off breakfast, and it deeply touched my heart, to the extent that it even saved a friendship with one of those friends at a later point in time. Some, stuff was happening in her life. She was pulling away. And I actually told her, like, that was one of the most important things someone ever did for me. So I can feel you pulling away. I want to respect that, but I also want to let you know that you're a really important person for me. So I'm here for you, whenever you need me. And that really saved our friendship at that time. So, just as an example, that the bonds that you have with other people can be immensely strengthened if you allow yourself to take care, if you allow others to take care of you this week and really sort of feel that renewal that can take place in the physical recovery, in the grief. Stage 4, emotional release. So you are usually, most women during this time feel very emotional, tender, heartbroken, especially if you've been trying to conceive for a while. It is so painful. But in that withdrawal within yourself that's happening now, you also have access to a heightened state of intuition and vision. And you can use that for emotional release during this process. Um, you can journal, you can dance, you can draw. Just let your feelings flow, and don't go into any of the stories that you might be telling yourself. This might never happen for me. Why did this happen for me? Those are the stories. See if you can stay with the core emotion that you're feeling. So if it's sadness, really go into your body and feel like, what does sadness feel like? And rather than trying to argue with it or turn it into an even bigger story in your mind, can you really feel what it feels like to grieve? Um, that's why I love dancing, because with dancing, there's no room for stories. There's just room, when I dance my emotions, it's like you become the emotion, the physical sensation of that emotion. Why this is so important is because when you grieve over something so big as this, other stuff usually comes up as well. Stuff from the past, deeper wounds. So, in this heightened state of intuition and vision, if you open yourself up to anything that presents itself, you might be able to heal deeper wounds that you were never able to look at before because they were just too painful. But now I've heard women say, like, it's like my heart has been cracked open and everything comes pouring out. I no longer have any barriers. And that's where the deep healing can take place. One beautiful ritual that I just came across called for digging a hole in the earth and just speaking or shouting anything that's coming up for you into that hole. And then when you're empty, you close that hole and you thank the earth for helping you release and clean that energy for you. So if you're into rituals, I feel this could also be a really beautiful way to really be with whatever's being triggered within you, whatever's coming up for you. And like, the reason this is so important is if you don't let it out, it will stay in your body, in your subconscious mind, as happened, with my client who just couldn't pick up the phone to schedule her next transfer. That's what happens when you don't work through the emotions. They keep affecting everything that you do, and you're not even aware of it. Or maybe you are aware of it, but you don't know how to change that. So the only way to change that is to work through it. Then stage 5. So we've had the physical loss, the release, the recovery, the emotional release with all of those emotions. Now there's also space for clarity and direction. So this is where you get to ground yourself again. Um, because there is a final step that you can take to process your loss. It doesn't end with just feeling your feelings. You also want to transition out of the direct grief and into a more longer term relationship with your loss. And it doesn't have to happen the same week. Just feel whenever you're ready for this. What this means is that you integrate the memory of your baby into your life and make sure that it's something that you can keep connecting to in a way that feels empowering. So, one of the things that I always do with my clients is that I have a session with them where we go to, like, it's a guided meditation. I'll take them in that meditation to a beautiful spot in nature and we'll connect to the baby that they lost. And I'll get them to hold the baby and feel that the love is still there. And this is a crucial step because what often happens is that women guard their heart and they don't want to connect to the memory of the baby any longer. Even though they've been traveling, with that baby for weeks during their pregnancy, they'd already created an entire future together. Like for me, that was one of the loneliest things about my loss. Any future plans I made, I no longer had to make for the both of us. It was just me again. And it was so incredibly lonely. So that makes you want to shy away from thinking about that baby, about that pregnancy, feeling that there's just pain there. Um, but if you then there's many, I'll give you a couple of other examples as well of how you can do this, but by connecting to your baby, such as through this guided meditation, you start to realize that love doesn't end with death. So what I would do is have women talk to the baby. Oftentimes there's guilt or grief, so I let them say that out loud to their baby, like, what is it you feel guilty about? What would you want to tell your baby? What did they bring you or teach you? And I also asked the baby if they have any messages for their mother. And this is, oh my God, the stuff that comes up is incredible during this meditation. Women who've maybe never even connected to their baby in this way for over a decade and suddenly feel like it's safe. And oh, this is where true softening happens. And then at the end of the journey, I will let them leave the baby in a way that feels really safe and loving. So that's the image that I want them to take away from the journey is that their baby is safe and protected. And I also tell them you can always come back to this place and visit your baby. It's not like you're leaving your baby behind. You're creating a safe, warm nest or put them in the arms of the Divine Mother. Or, I always see within the meditation what feels right for that particular woman. But knowing that there's a safe space where they can visit their baby and keep that loving connection alive, it's so healing. And as I mentioned, there are other ways of doing this. You could also do body or energetic work that focuses on cleaning your womb space, really connecting to any lingering trauma that might be there, and then transforming that into nice positive energy that you return to the earth, for example. Or you could create a memorial, remember your baby through rituals. It's really about not shying away from the memory, but keeping a place or getting to a place of love and gratitude for the fact that you journeyed together for a while and that created immense grief and sadness, but it also brought you love and joy while they were there. Um, yeah, love and joy. So it was really inspiring for me to record this episode. The more I talk about this, the more sad I get that this type of postpartum care after loss is not readily available to all of us. So I hope that I've been able to plant some seeds here today. If you've experienced loss and you feel you could use some support on your journey, there's two ways to work with me. So you can book a personal consult on my page, thatfertilefeeling.com/loss, or you can join my 3-month group program, Healing Fertility, which starts this Sunday, May 5th. You can find out more info on my page, thatfertilefeeling.com/healing-fertility, and I'll put both links in the show notes. Let me tell you a little bit more about Healing Fertility. So this is a group program in which I help you connect to your cycle, the womb, your emotions, your subconscious to see if there are any blockages. There's also a session about your ideas about motherhood, how supported you feel in your journey, about creating a truly empowering fertility journey. There are sessions on dealing with pain and grief, on learning how to surrender to the process. And my focus is also really on creating a community for you so that you can recognize yourself in the other and know that you're not on this journey by yourself. So, what this will look like in practice is that there are 4 group sessions and 8 pre-recorded sessions. You have lifetime access to all of them. In the group sessions, there's room to share about your experiences. Those won't be recorded, of course. And I can also connect you to a sharing partner. So you have someone who can hold space for you in between sessions. So that could look like you connect on WhatsApp and just ask each other once a week, like, how are you doing? Thereby creating space for the other person to just really, yeah, vent or just tell you how they're doing without you offering them any suggestions or support or solutions. It's really about creating a space for emotions and processes. I myself am available on WhatsApp as well from Monday to Friday for questions and support. So we start this Sunday, May 5th, and as a bonus, I'm also giving all participants a free one-on-one abdominal therapy session where we'll look into your health story. I'll create a personalized protocol for you, and I will teach you self-massage techniques that you can use to increase blood flow in your womb space, and really balance your hormones, work with your digestion to optimize your fertility. So if you're interested, that fertilefeeling.com/healing-fertility. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. I would love to hear from you what your main takeaways from this episode. If there's, yeah, if I was able to plant any seeds here, always good to hear from you. So you can find me on Instagram at that fertile feeling or email me at francoise@thatfertilefeeling.com. I always love to hear from you and I always get back to you and hope to see you back next week. Bye bye.